Greetings and welcome to Photoshop Techniques, Real-Life Examples with Larry Vogel. In this series of videos, I will be sharing with you Photoshop techniques as solutions to real-life images with specific problems. Some of the images in this series will be from files submitted to me by photographers for my critique sessions. I have been holding monthly critique sessions for over 30 years now. During these sessions, I have helped hundreds of photographers improve the quality of their photographs through group critiques and offering image processing solutions through Photoshop. During this time, I have gathered together thousands of real-life images from past critique participants. So I'm going to draw from this collection of photos and help lead you through a series of before and after real-life examples, showing you specific image problems with specific Photoshop solutions. I say this is guaranteed to satisfy both sides, the technical and the creative photographer. So sit back and enjoy this next episode of Photoshop Techniques Real Life Examples. Okay, so here's this beautiful still life image created by Sudipta Das, and she created this image in one of my close-up macro still life workshops. Beautiful photograph, and she submitted it for the DPX critique night, and there were some suggestions made during the critique discussion. A couple of interesting things here as I prepared to show you some of the suggestions and some of the techniques we use to implement those corrections. First thing is there's seems like somewhere like right about here in the middle where this one pane of glass doesn't have any light coming through it, and so that was one suggestion. Is that possible, to light this panel up and make it kind of look and feel like the other glass panels that are backlit? And again, the answer is yes, it's Photoshop. The other thing too is over here on the right side, there is a little kind of a latch that goes to this little window that's open on the lantern, and it casts a little bit of a funny looking shadow there that's kind of hard to figure out what that is. And I think it's a little more distracting than it is necessary. So that was also another idea, was to remove this shadow and this little bit of the latch that's sort of peeking out here in the background. And then kind of another point was then, could we kick a little more light back on the front of this flower? So everything is a little bit backlit, and the cool thing to have done in the studio would be to have bounced a little light back into the flower, or maybe a little more. It kind of looks like there might already be some, but to provide a little more light on that flower. And then additionally, everything is really nice and warm, and this sort of concrete block that everything is sitting on has a little bit of a cool feeling to it. So I don't know if that was just some existing window light that wasn't balanced to the other light that was being used to light the rest of the subject, or maybe there was a little bit of fill flash that was used, which also then would be daylight balance compared to maybe this warm light that's being used for the background. So can we warm that up? All right, so this is the actual changes that we made to the image during the DPX night. So you'll see we did light up this glass so that it looks a little more like the other pieces that are backlit. Put a little more light on the front end of the flower here. Removed the shadowy piece from that latch over the edge of the leaf, and also the little space here. And then warmed up the block of concrete a little bit. And you'll see there's also a little bit of back here on the edge, softening up some of these little details that are in the background. I think she did a nice job using a bit of a shallow depth of field to throw off any detail in that background, but we decided to maybe kick it back a little bit more just along the edge there. So as I was looking to go through this process to create the video today, I started looking at it, and this is kind of an interesting thing. Every time we revisit our images, we might see one more thing or another thing that we maybe, oh, what about if we did this? Or, hey, wait a minute, I should have done this. And so constantly revisiting our images with fresh eyes, and also what she did originally, sharing her image with a critique group. It's always, I think, a valuable resource to have if you can participate with critique groups and let other people see your images and be open to those suggestions. Remember, it's your photograph. You can decide whether or not you like the suggestions that are made, or you can decide to leave it the way it is. But always worth sort of getting it out of your own computer and showing it to some friends, and more than just friends, because I always say when you share your photographs with your family and friends, they all think you're a genius. But if you really want to know how good you're doing, take your photos to a meeting, share them with other photographers, because they'll be more than happy to tell you how bad your photographs are. Just kidding. You know, most people just take pictures with their iPhones and post them on the internet, and everybody goes ooh and ah. Ooh. Ah. And all of us who know about digital processing just know that, hey, we can always improve an image through taking it into some digital processing. Use a little bit of creativity also to reinterpret the file as it was. So the one thing I noticed this kind of next time through looking at the image and preparing for this video is we've opened up the lighting here, but I think we neglected to maybe bring in a little more light through the leaves, see, as they are over here, and a little bit more light through those petals as it is over here. So here's the additional correction that I did as I was preparing to make the video.
Cool.
Let's take a look and see how that is done. We're going to jump into Photoshop. Right now we're viewing this in Bridge. I'm going to double click on the image here and it will open up in Photoshop. So here we are in Photoshop, and you will see I've got all my layers over here on the side, and the original background layer will be this bottom one here. So there we are, as Sudipta had shared the image with the group. And then going through the critique process, as I said, so a little bit of retouching, a little bit of masking, a little bit of curves, all that kind of stuff. So let's see how it was done. Background layer is her layer that she sent in. And again, when we do these critiques, many times I'm just receiving a JPEG, so it's not like a high-end 16-bit file, but it's amazing what we can do with a JPEG. All right, so this next layer up, which I always do, is create a new copy layer where I'm going to do my retouching. Now, I didn't rename this layer, and I probably should have, so I'll go ahead and do it now. So by double-clicking on the layer name, I can rename it, and so now I understand this is called Retouch. And you'll see that I have, let me zoom in on that little shadow there. You'll see that right in here, I have done the retouching where I've removed this part of the shadow from the leaf, and also this little part that comes in between the two leaves, and that's the after and that's before.
Wow.
Okay, so pretty simple. I'm not going to go through the whole process of doing the retouching right now. Basically, clone stamped it, I'm sure. Okay, so that's the basic retouching there. Didn't do really much else to the image as far as retouching goes. All right, so let's take a look at this idea here. How do we bring this light back in here? I'm going to show you this first layer that I created where I lit up the glass, but as I said, neglected to think about bringing some more light in through the leaf. And if I look at that mask, that's what it looks like, right? So let's zoom in on that. And this, I am pretty certain I did with just a quick selection. So did a really easy quick selection to show those edges, turned it into a mask, and then here is the curve adjustment. Now you can see there's a really strong pull over to the left side from the right towards the left, and that is going to introduce a lot more contrast. See how that's just like, it's amazing. Wow. Lights up that glass. And then you'll also notice that on the same curve adjustment, this red and blue here indicates that I have gone into the red channel and I have pulled this down just to warm it up a little bit, or actually to control the color temperature in there a little bit. And then also back to the blue channel, and the blue channel controls the yellow or purple. So in this case, or bluish purple. So in this case, I've added some more yellow into there and taken care of the color balance. So we've brightened it up and we've also color balanced it. So brighten with the luminance channel here, and then the red and the blue channel to do the color balance. Okay?
Okay.
But just the idea of being able to simply, in this case, like I said, I probably took the quick selection tool and made a quick selection of this area around the leaf. And like I've shown before, that the quick selection tool might select too many pixels. Hold down Alt Option and I can subtract this edge here. I can subtract the leaf here. Like I mentioned before, had I been thinking ahead, I might have kept the leaf selection in there and to make a better mask. But anyhow, that's kind of the idea. And once we have the selection made properly, remember, when we have an active selection and we add a curve adjustment, it becomes a mask. Or anytime we add a mask, that selection becomes a mask. So that's basically how we lit that up. So what I did this time when I thought about this idea of the leaf was I went ahead and just duplicated this curve adjustment layer, and this time went in and opened up the leaf, and you'll see that that looks nice and soft right now. So if I open up the properties panel, you'll see that I've taken that mask and I've feathered it. So this is the non-destructive feathering. So I can show you when I pull that back, there is the complete square or rectangle window where I've opened it up and allowed the light to come through where the leaf was coming through, and where I want the light to come through the leaf and through the glass at the same time. In this case, I pulled the feathering up so that I could soften that so that the light was a lot softer coming through there. You're also going to notice this little thing here. Those are the flower petals, and I'm going to show you how I did that in a second. That's a little addition to this. So let me just back up here a second, and let me turn this one off. I will reduplicate this layer, Control or Command J. And then what I did easily to do this, I just grabbed the Marquee tool, the rectangular Marquee tool. So I've made this rectangular selection to the edges, like at the top, to the right edge, and just below those petals that would appear to have a little more light coming through those. Okay, so on this selection now, if I look at that original mask, so Alt or Option click on the mask, that's what my mask looks like. So if I just take this as it is now and fill it with white, right? So you'll see this white is going to allow the curve to show through. So I'll just go up to Edit, Fill, Fill with White, and say OK. And now you'll see I have the entire rectangle filled with white. And I'm going to Alt Option, click back on the image, and Control or Command D to deselect that. And now you'll see if I turn this layer off and on, we've got that light kind of coming through everywhere.
Okay.
Where this rectangle appears, it has now gone over the leaf, follows along this edge where the frame of the lantern is, and then down in here, if I look at these petals, compared to the ones over here to the side, I need to only lighten up really kind of the first row or two of petals. These down here don't necessarily need to be that light, but I can kind of play with that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump back down to the layer, image layer, or this retouch layer, and I'm going to see if I can make a quick selection. So I'm going to grab the quick selection tool from up here, and I'm going to come down, and I want to just select these petals. And like I said, I only need the ones that kind of fall into where the light area is. Now I'll zoom in on that. And if you remember or if you want to check out a previous video on how to improve these quick selections, because it always does this, like it's not quite selecting all of the pixels or the correct pixels. If I make my selection tool a little smaller, so there is a YouTube video where you can find out how to really kind of zero in on making better selections from your quick selections. I'm going to try here just by holding down the Alt or Option key, and I get the takeaway sign. So I'm going to try to remove these pixels that have been selected and get something fairly close right there. It doesn't have to be perfect. This little V-shaped thing I can probably fill in a little easier. I'll grab the Polygonal Tool, and I'm going to hold down Alt or Option so I have the minus. I'm going to click in here and sort of follow this shape of the V here, very much like the bird wing we did on the video on how to correct these things. And there, so now I have that space selected. Now this edge of the petal is a little bit soft, not quite as sharp in focus, so it may not be necessary. We'll see. I'm going to go ahead and just take out this one little corner here, and I think that's pretty good. Because I'm going to soften this in the end anyhow. But here's the thing in thinking about this, is I've got this selection made. So when I have an active selection, that means that the only thing I can do anything with right now is inside of this selection. And if I look at that mask that I made with the rectangular Marquee tool, you'll see here's my selection as it intersects with this white mask here, the white portion of the mask. And if I have my paintbrush from the toolbar and make sure I have black in the foreground, and if I paint over this area here, it's only going to paint inside of this active area, right? So that controls where the paint's going to appear on the mask. And if I Alt or Option click out of here, you'll see that it has removed that curve adjustment from here. But I don't want to remove it 100%. So let's do this. I'm going to undo both of those. So Control or Command Z, my two brush strokes. So I'm back to the all white section in the mask. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come up here to my opacity. And I'm going to drop the opacity down to 50%. And so now, if white reveals and black conceals, if I paint in this area at 50%, and you'll see if I look at my mask now, I now have white here, black out here, and 50% gray in here. Now, kind of interesting that this happened because I hadn't planned on showing you this, but here's a bonus tip. This happens a lot when we're painting on masks, is that I'm painting at 50% and there's a spot that I missed. So if I want to go back in and paint that spot, the problem is your brush accumulates. Every time I do another stroke, it's going to accumulate over that space there. And I'm never going to get this spot down here to come to 50% because now I've added more on the outside there. So let me show you this little trick. Control or Command Z to undo that. I want to fill in this little white space in here. I'm going to go ahead and bump this up to 100%. I'm going to come over to my toolbar here and I'm going to grab the eyedropper tool. And I'm going to select this color of gray. And you'll notice now on my toolbar, the foreground color now becomes this color of gray that I've painted on the mask. And now if I go back to my brush, B for brush, and I paint at 100%.
Oh, no. This did not happen. Oh, no.
But I got a problem. Let me undo that again. Is that I want to make sure that I'm only painting inside of that area. So I would need to go ahead and grab my Marquee tool, and I want to actually subtract this area right across this edge here. I missed a little spot there, but you're going to get the idea, and paint that spot out. All right, so there's my deselection. Now, and I'm going to end up blurring this mask so that little spot's really not going to matter. So let's come back out here and take a look at this. So there's my mask. I have 100% curve adjustment on the glass. I have 100% on the leaf, and I have 50% on the flower itself. And let's kind of back out of here, and you will see that you can see this is too obvious. There's a hard edge there. So what I want to do is double click on my curve adjustment layer, open up the properties panel, but actually I want to double click on the layer mask, and here's where I want to feather it. And I want to be looking at the image just like we are now, so I can kind of see when the proper feathering happens. So right about there, I like. So that's about 41 pixels, right? So if I turn this off and on, and if it's still too strong down here, I can freehand paint. Again, I can go back to my default colors, put black in the foreground, drop this opacity down to about 30%, and make sure that I have a really soft brush, maybe down there around 30%. And remember, I've already got the feathering set, so it's going to be soft anyhow. And what I want to do is kind of slowly paint this bottom area with black so that it kind of also fades the way these do. So now let's take a look at the mask and see what we have. So there's the blur of the leaves, and here's where I've sort of painted in the bottom edge a little bit darker. And let's back out completely and turn this off and on. Wow! So very realistic. So you see, curves are a very powerful tool. It's like almost having a light switch where you can flip the light on and flip the light off. Pretty powerful. Just drop in a curve adjustment and flip that switch and the light is on. That simple.
Wow, love it.
But wait, there's more. Also, if it feels a little bright, we could also come back in and come up here to the opacity and drop this back just a little bit. Maybe there around 80%. That looks good.
I like that.
Beautiful. All right, so that's how we brought the light into the glass and additionally through the leaf and part of the flower. So the additional comment, remember, we made was, and I'm going to come up here to this next layer up here. And again, didn't keep my own, follow my own advice. My advice here is to label these layers. So I'm going to call this flower. And this flower layer here, I created a mask, just a simple quick selection. Painted out anything that I wasn't going to use, did a curve adjustment that looks like this, locked down the shadows, pulled up the high end here, and let's take a look at what that does. And there it is. So this is just like throwing a little bit of reflected light back into the flower.
Now that's
looks very
nice.
natural, like it really belongs there. There's an additional curve up here. Let's see what that goes to. Look at that. It's just the center of the flower where I've taken another curve adjustment and pulled in a little more light just into this middle area here by making a selection around just the middle. And let's turn that on. There's that curve adjustment. So we've done actually 2 adjustments. So let's relabel that one too. We're going to call this flower center. And there's the entire flower adjustment right there. Really helps it a lot.
Looking good.
Last step here was looking at this block here. Now, even though it doesn't look that bad, it's not like way out of color balance. The suggestion was to maybe warm this up. If you see the light on top of the block has that nice warm light hitting it, and on the front here, it's all of a sudden shifted. And it could be natural, but when we're making corrections, it's not always about, okay, well, that could have really happened. But it's more about what creates a better balance. And so real simple, I made a selection around the block. Actually, this looks like I didn't even select that. I just painted that edge and made a mask. And in this case, used a photo filter, the photo filter adjustment. So if I come down here to the adjustment layers, you'll see there is a photo filter adjustment. So I added that. And inside the photo filter adjustment, we have a couple of adjustments here. So I can pick an existing tone here. So it looks like I used the 85 warming filter, but I could also put in my own color if I want to. But this seems to work pretty well. So there's the color. If I want to change this color, all I got to do is open up the color picker by clicking on that box, and I could select any color I want. And that would create the warming filter over wherever my mask is open. So in this case, I went with the 85, and there's a couple of other adjustments. We have a density adjustment, which we really don't quite know how strong we want to make it until we apply it. And there's a preserve luminosity here that will also help it to maintain any image brightness. Well, this is fairly flat, so there's no real direct light on it or no really contrast in there, so I didn't really use it. But I did pull back the density. Let's go ahead and turn this photo filter adjustment on, and you'll see how it has warmed up, and it also darkened it just a tiny bit too, which I think is okay.
Now that's nice.
In addition to controlling the density here, I've also gone up here with the layer opacity. So many times it's great to take some of these adjustment layers, make them a little stronger than you think you want, start out at 100%, and then in this case, just pull it back till it looks about right. In this case, we were at 60%. All right. And so there is everything that we used. The center of the flower, the flower itself, the warming filter for the front of that block, the curve adjustment here for, and again, I didn't label that one, so let's just call this,
Oh, geez.
we'll call it window behind leaf. And then the window to bring some light in there where I had only done it on the glass initially. We now have it on the glass and the leaf and a little bit of that edge of the flower. The secondary layer to do a little bit of retouching where we took out the shadow on the leaf and the little bit of that little door closure from the lantern on this retouch layer.
Okay, that's nice.
And also fixed a little bit of that background on the edge there. All right, so this was our before image as it was sent to us for critique night, and with the suggestions that were made, we did the retouching, we did the window light with the leaf, we did a photo filter on the front, brightened up the flower, and additionally the flower on the center. That's it. So I think it's a pretty cool improvement. Let's go back here and look at it as it was inside a bridge. The initial image sent to us, the correction that we made that night, and now the additional correction that we added to this front end here, bringing some light through that leaf. So I want to thank Sudipta for submitting this image and allowing me to share it with you guys, show you some of the techniques that were used to go through and make some digital image processing improvements. So thanks a lot, and be sure to check out some future episodes as I show you some more images.
Oh man, that was a great way to
Okay, so there you are, another episode of Photoshop Techniques, Real Life Examples with me. I'm Larry Vogel. Thanks for tuning in, and always be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Be sure to check the description below where you will find links to my critique events, the Digital Photo Exchange, a meetup group with 2 online meetings per month on the second and last Thursdays, and also check out my Photoshop on the Fly Monday morning sessions, where we discuss all things photographic. Every Monday morning at 10 a.m. my time here in Southern California. Be sure to look for the links below in the description, and until next time, stay creative, be inspired, and be an inspiration to others.